Let's talk about one of the newbies. The Southern Methodist University Mustangs, the Pony Express rides into the ACC, and they get Florida State right out of the gate at home, and then they go to Louisville. So they get baptized pretty quick here, Roddy.
They certainly do, man. And you know, SMU, we've called them the walk-on of the conference, maybe a little unfairly, but they aren't taking any.
Not really. They're not taking it.
I know. Yeah, they're not taking the scholarship
really,
money.
Who among us hasn't played with that rich kid walk-on? I wasn't the rich kid walk-on, by the way.
Look, we've all played with them, and sometimes they end up performing really well. So I am bullish on SMU this year. I am excited to see what they do in the ACC. They've got the biggest positions not figured out, but they seem better equipped than a lot of the other teams that we've seen make that transition from the Group of Five to the Power Five. They've got the quarterback figured out, and they've got an offensive line that's full of a lot of Power Five transfers that is going to be pretty cohesive going into next year. And it was one of the best offensive lines in the Group of Five, maybe the best offensive line in the Group of Five a year ago. So look, the opening slate in the ACC, Florida State, Louisville, that's tough. But then it gets much more manageable on the back end. At Stanford's not going to scare anybody. At Duke's not going to scare anybody right now. Pittsburgh coming off a really down year. I don't really know what to make of Boston College. We'll talk about that a little bit later. At Virginia is a plucky team, but I think SMU's better. And then Cal, like, they should be able to run the back half of that schedule pretty well. So I don't think this is a team that's going to make an ACC championship game. Those first two games probably prevent that. But I do think it's a team that could end up 9-3 at the end of the year, very realistically, especially if they get off to a good start in the non-conference.
Yeah, I have them at 10-2 for the ceiling. If all goes right, if everything goes right, and then maybe you are in the ACC championship game, depending on the two. Preston Stone is the presumed starter quarterback, but Kevin Jennings came in and played for them in the American Championship game last year, and they kept them both. It apparently was touch and go a little bit with Jennings for a while, but they kept them both. And I talked to Rhett Lashlee about this. So he's a Gus Malzahn disciple. He and Gus had a lot of discussions because Gus's UCF team went from the American Conference to the Big 12 last year, and it was Gus's toughest year as a head coach. And the depth caught up with them. They had a collapse against Baylor. They probably should have beaten Oklahoma and didn't. And so Gus gave Rhett quite a bit of advice about how to handle depth as you move up in conference. And Rhett clearly took it because they loaded up in the transfer portal on the line of scrimmage. Jared Harrison Hunt, the defensive lineman from Miami, Omari Amor, defensive lineman from Ohio State, Jonathan Jefferson, defensive lineman from Georgia, Andrew Chamblee, who started 8 games at offensive tackle at Arkansas last year. Jafari Harvey was an edge at Miami. Billy Walton was an edge at Texas. Tank Booker was a D tackle at Arkansas. Like, these guys probably, most of these guys were not stars on their old teams. But in terms of the right size bodies who are used to dealing with the size bodies you're going to see, they have that. So that gives me some confidence. What doesn't is, like, this team was the American Athletic Conference champion last year. They lost 34-17 to a bad TCU team. Yeah. Like, that's and TCU's TCU's an established Big 12 program that's deeper. So, like, I look at the BYU and the TCU game, which are not ACC games. Those feel like must wins if you want to have a really good season. Like, nobody's expecting you to beat Florida State, but beat BYU and TCU, and I think you're going to have a really good year.
I could not agree more. Like, those two games to me are the difference between 9-3, 10-2, and 6-6. And obviously, if you're at 9-3, you lose 2 more games. You're already at 7-5. But then, what does that do to your confidence as well? If you're limping, I mean, if you lose one or both of those 2 games in the front half of the schedule, you're looking at 2-4, 3-3, and then going into the back half. How do you rebound for that? So I think those games are big. Yes, from a win-loss standpoint, but also from just a morale standpoint going into ACC play against 2 of the best in the league. So I could not agree more. I think the BYU game, the TCU game are sort of not the ultimate determining factors, because there's a lot of football after it. If you want to have a special season, you better take care of business in the non-con.
And the ACC needs wins like that. It's a conversation we had last week with the perception of the league. Like wins like that individually don't necessarily move the meter, but add them up. If the teams around the league are winning games like that, it becomes a much bigger deal. I have their floor at 5-7 just in case the depth is not where it needs to be, and it catches up to them toward the end of the season. But I think it's going to be a much better season than that. Like I said, 10-2 for the ceiling for me. You had 9-3. I think this could be a very good team. Another team,
I have their floor in the exact same spot again because of the depth. In case it falls out, like there is a scenario. There's a lot of toss-ups in there, to be honest with you. Who I think Florida's. I mean, I think SMU's a little bit better, but not so much better that they can survive an injury or two.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.